Oh, jeez.
Live.
Hey everybody, we're live at the Hive for episode 31, World Cup edition. That's just a bit of a lie because we haven't actually done anything at all to do with the World Cup. It just crossed my mind. I'm Dan Adelko.
I'm Courtney Castle.
And I'm Kristen Mason.
It's Kristen's premiere episode with us here on Live at the Hive, so we're welcoming her to the live stream today. Kristen does some social media marketing and some content marketing.
I do.
All that fun stuff.
So, Kristen, are you nervous at all today?
A little bit, I won't lie.
So what we'd like everybody to do that's watching is actually come on down to the tannery and just come sit right in front of Kristen.
That'd be great.
Or if you can't, show Kristen a little love and give us a like and drop her a hey in the comments.
There we go. It's all good, Kristen. It's just pretend. There's really it's nothing. It's Hal, the little computer. It looks like that. And we're good.
Yeah, since we have our social media expert with us today, so we're going to be talking about some social media marketing with you guys and media networks and lots of fun stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So we're super excited. And if you're not watching, World Cup games in soccer right now, then hopefully you're watching us.
Actually, I don't know if there's any on right now because Russia's 11 hours or 10 hours. It's all usually like 8 a.m. 7 a.m. type thing.
Yeah, Alex and Justin were telling me about 8 a.m. Yeah, watching 8 a.m. games this week, and I was like, all right.
Yeah, a few years ago when I lived in Vancouver, I can't remember where it was, but it was a ridiculous time change as well. They're like 6 a.m., 5 a.m. games, stuff like that.
Crazy.
Yeah, but no, good topics this week because obviously social media is, the current state of the internet. For a lot of people, I think it's confusing because of the pace at which social media changes and moves, which is incredibly fast, and also just the impact on business. I think really that's kind of one of the things to focus on. It's a little bit different than if you're an influencer or a celebrity or a musician. I think it's more challenging for businesses to really kind of gain that voice without using it as basically a billboard. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. And I think that a lot of people, maybe 4 years ago or so, the conversation was more so why you should use social media and convincing people to use it and invest in it. Mm-hmm. And now it's more so how. Okay, I understand I need to be on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever for my business, but how do I do it? How is it done without just posting content randomly that seems like it's on brand for you, but not actually seeing any results from it? So we kind of just wanted to walk you through a program that Kristen and I have been working on for over a year now, actually with one of our favorite clients. And they actually have several venues, restaurant and wedding venues in Southern Ontario. And basically they have a social media manager or a person who's leading the project at each of these venues. So the question that was kind of presented to our team is, how do you kind of corral that kind of a strategy with multiple locations, multiple people who have varying levels of marketing and social media savviness? And really, like, how do you make sure that you're actually funneling that into growth and qualified growth too? Like 10,000 social followers is great, but if they don't produce any sort of business for you or provide any value, then that's kind of a strategy that's fallen dead.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this group is as a larger group with, I think, 8 or 9, they're high-end venues. I would call all of them high-end. Some of them aren't physically large, but they're very unique in Southern Ontario. So they've got a lot of great content. They've got a lot of beautiful images and videos. And we've worked with them for a number of years. And I think one of the big things was the idea of having a social media advocate at each location was something we had talked about with them for 4 years, if not longer. And we finally were able to, I don't think it was ever a disagreement, it was a logistics thing. Yeah. How do you actually do it, right? How do you incentivize somebody on your team that maybe is a manager or has a different function to say why you should be doing social media without them just thinking, hey, you're just giving me more work. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And how do you make people excited about social media and how to make it, these people have very busy core jobs. Like Dan said, they could be a restaurant manager or something like that, which if any of you worked in the restaurant business, you know that that's a very busy job. So just in terms of like the process in naturally being in the wedding space, in the restaurant space, it's extremely visually driven. So being on things like Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest are just kind of natural. It's a natural fit. But what is the actual strategy when there are so many people doing it, and how does that come together?
Yeah, and also tactically, how do you get a staff, a team, that's, again, as Courtney said, whether it's a wedding or whether it's a restaurant, during a dinner rush, that's not necessarily the best time where I think someone would be thinking of social media. And what we've managed to do is kind of break through a policy, and they say this a lot in the military. It's like you got to win hearts and minds, right? And when you win the hearts and minds, then the team sees it as being something that's actually really quite valuable. Luckily, social media has become so pervasive that I think a lot of people do see it as being valuable. And I'll just run over some of the core metrics from the last, say, 5 months. There's been some really excellent, like really awesome growth. And obviously without getting into specifics, but with a slower posting schedule actually than the previous 5 months, the follower count has basically doubled, which is amazing. Let's see here, and engagement has gone up about 45%. Now that's across about 8 different Instagram profiles that we're looking at, with numerous Instagram changes, and a really large increase in the engagement with their existing customers. So, you look at a brand like Coca-Cola. Yeah, you're talking about tens of millions of people, right? When you're looking at a localized business that has a number of locations, you have to qualify what value the numbers mean, right? Like, is 1 million going to work? Yes, it probably would, even in Southern Ontario, but the engagement being the most important thing. So I'll kick it over to Courtney and to Kristen now, because it was their program, to talk about how some of those things were actually put into place.
For sure. So like Dan said, like obviously we're looking at growth, but growth rate being not just the number of followers you gain, but also the number you lose. So you do have to watch your attrition rates as well. But yeah, basically, and this was slow season as well, the metrics that he's discussing, because obviously things like golf courses and weddings and whatnot, it is a slow season in the winter. So you want to make sure that your strategy leverages that kind of thing as well, that it's maintaining people's interest in the off season and capitalizing on the natural growth and attention you're going to get when it comes to your peak season. So yeah, a little bit on what we actually do, Kristen and I, is we set up a reoccurring, like a monthly meeting, so to speak, not really, more of a working session, where we go through a deep dive of the insights and analytics from the last month for across all of the venues and all of the channels. We always provide that to the team. They're probably, whether or not they have the time to go through it in depth, that's what we do for them. We do that kind of heavy lifting and sifting through the data. and pulling together the key metrics that really matter. So, for example, a couple metrics that we've been really focusing on are the video to photo ratio of posting on Facebook and Instagram. So some metrics that are a little more hidden and a little less obvious than the basic growth and engagement, which are always kind of going to be your KPIs in a social program. But when you're looking really at the nuggets on how to tweak things and how to grow, we're also looking at things like virality rate. So you will have paid and organic traffic on Facebook, which organic is obviously anything you've posted that's just gained natural impressions. Paid is anything you've paid for. And then virality are the impressions and engagement you get based on other posts. So for example, in the project we're talking about, we have upwards of 6 different Facebook accounts, and then 6 different Instagram accounts that are all working together to build a genuine, natural relationship, and working to engage with one another and share one another's content. And that's actually one of the most successful metrics that we've seen, especially in the last few months, is really growing the account and extending the breadth of your audience by increasing that virality. So you still have your paid and organic, but the virality source as well is really important. And you can see all of those in your Facebook analytics, in your metrics. It'll give you all those kinds of numbers.
Yeah, so one of the things that's actually called, this is from a growth hacking side of things. When you have metrics, it doesn't really matter what you're talking about. You talk about e-commerce, you could talk about web analytics, you talk about social analytics. You're always going to have just tons and tons of them. And the term that is used is called defining your North Star metric. And that's exactly what Courtney just talked about. You saw virality having the biggest impact, and that's your North Star. So you know that if I push this particular lever, it's going to have the best positive impact on the real performance for both social and whether it's a conversion or even in Instagram's case now, we'll talk about it a little bit, is e-commerce, because that's new and growing. But yeah, define your North Star metric. It's really important because you're just going to see this like massive sheet of numbers and being, well, which one actually has the most weight for me? So.
For sure, yeah, and there's a lot of things. That's kind of what our job is, Kristen and I, is to help the team focus. Because there's always new features and new changes and new ideas and things you could do that happen every single day, pretty much. So we try to keep the team focused, and it's a team of about 10 different people from, like I said, from varying cities and things like that, completely different venues even. So to bring them together, we give them similar goals. So once we go through the insights, we determine particular metrics and what are the levers that we need to pull to make things grow. Mm-hmm. And then in the section 2 of our meetings, we give them specific goals based on those insights. So if we see that virality is really improving our reach and really growing our audiences, specifically in the geographic area we want, which is important, like Dan said, when you're looking at local social audiences, you want to make sure you're growing it in the area that your venue is, for obvious reasons. You then take that, and perhaps we see that virality is being driven by a lot of videos. So mm-hmm. Our goal is then going to be to double the amount of videos we post for the next month. Perhaps each account posted 1. Now every account will post 2, and make them reasonable and incremental goals, mm-hmm. not like something crazy like post a video every second day or something really unrealistic.
Yeah. So Scott Amos, old friend from the Demure days, the old startup, who I believe now you're back on the West Coast. So welcome, Scott. Scott was asking about Instagram e-commerce and elaborating. So maybe I'll just interrupt to address Scott's question. Sure. So over the past, say, 2 months, Instagram has increasingly introduced the ability to tag products, link products back to a product page. And they've just recently introduced their shopping bag as well. So Instagram has been making moves over the past couple of months, pretty big moves. And through Facebook, obviously, as well now, because Instagram is owned by Facebook. The big prediction is that obviously Facebook and Instagram are going to go right after Amazon as much as possible. So we are going to cover some more of the e-commerce features available on Instagram, but that's kind of the elaboration of what's going on there. And there's a lot of things that you can do on the e-commerce side that are incredibly effective and unique to Instagram and to Facebook in terms of conversion rates, lead generation, conversion rates, and sales overall.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, one of their favorites in particular is the story ads that they rolled out in like late January this year. So the ability to run ads directly to stories, leveraging the fact that stories have become so popular right now, is something that marketers have been loving and using for the past few months. So if you haven't checked that out as a different placement to test against your existing Facebook advertising, I would suggest doing that, looking at that.
And Scott's actually in Kelowna, BC, so now I'm even more jealous. Beautiful place.
There,
yeah, that's nice.
But I've never been.
No,
Well, there you go. There you go. All right, sorry. Back to it.
All good, yeah. So very reasonable goals. Make sure, like, we can't emphasize that enough. Like, it's really easy to get really eager about your social growth, but consistency is key. Month after month, we pick 3 goals each month, and it could be something like comment on another venue's posts twice a month. Something small that you can build, and it'll be incremental over time. And if the goal itself, we don't see the reflection and the insights that we wanted, then we alternate for a different goal, and we can sub that out and pivot our strategy on a monthly basis. And this is kind of a key to the monthly reoccurring meetings, because social media changes all the time. Instagram rolled out at the end of last month, beginning of this month, rolled out their new algorithm. So as you don't really have time to pivot probably every single day or anything like that, but once a month at least we look at that kind of thing as well. What's a new feature that we could leverage in our strategy? What's a change that's happened in the algorithm, and how could we combat that? So just for example, we walked them through the most recent algorithm change, in which the algorithm is driven more by behavior than time, like chronological. So one of the key things that people have suggested is tagging accounts and requesting UGC, or user-generated content. So you can see, like, as a wedding venue or a restaurant, for example, people are coming to your place all the time. They're probably taking photos of their food, as a lot of people do nowadays. You want them to post that to social media and tag you in it. And the fact that they've tagged you in a photo is a symbol to the Instagram algorithm that you have a relationship with this person, and it's real, and they're not just a follower of yours. So that is something that's I would definitely encourage looking at integrating into your strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the other important things, and this is a little bit, this is actually relatively new, but there's been talk of it in the last year or so, is really that the notion of the newsfeed is dead or dying, and it actually is. So if you're not entirely sure, Instagram, the news feed would be the normal post that you would see streaming on Instagram. On Facebook, it's obviously the news feed. Stories, which were actually originally created by Snap, were integrated by Instagram and now integrated into Facebook. You probably see them on the mobile. There's a 3x2 grid of recent stories, and then also, that's a featured story, and then there's a listing across the top. That the growth rate of stories is basically 2 times the growth of posts. So from a strategic perspective, that's algorithmic. There's gonna be a change in how the whole algorithm works, but it's also staying on top of how people really enjoy interacting with Instagram, and particularly Instagram, and now Facebook. It's a very blurred line. Stories are becoming far more popular than just a standard newsfeed post. So it's like, you see that it's in the news, and what Courtney's doing is just distilling it and saying, okay, what do we do with this? Right? There are features, for example, you can hashtag, you can tag other profiles in an Instagram story, leveraging that and people using animations in the videos and having some more fun with it, that kind of thing.
For sure. And that's kind of the process that we've gone through, and it's been, like I said, over a year now or so. And as the team gets more comfortable with the strategy and more confident in their execution of it, that kind of frees us up to do other fun tactics that we know, that we've used before, that we know are great for adding that kind of that fuel to the growth, so to speak. So one in particular that Kristen's just going to explain a little more to us was an Instagram takeover that we did at one of the venues that's opening actually today is their very first wedding.
All
so we did a takeover for them specifically focused on Instagram growth, and it went very well.
An Instagram takeover, it's essentially it's just another channel coming in and using your Instagram channel to take over an event, whether it be a tour or a concert or any form of special event. And basically it's like a partnership with our client. We do have the unique opportunity, as said, that we do have six venues, and which includes 5 restaurants, and I believe it works out to 6 Instagram channels. So at that point, we ended up, we did a takeover from the main parent umbrella account, which most people don't recognize, and kind of brought it all together. by having every channel share a promotional post about it. And we had a tour walkthrough of a brand new facility. It ended up, it was great for following. We had great results from it. From a channel that generally, within a month, they usually gain probably around 50 followers. They ended up with just around 200. And they also had like over 500, within 3 days, they had over 500 profile visits, as well as their reach gained over 20,000 just about. I'm looking at the numbers now. So, I mean, it was a great success, and it kind of really showed their team different methods they can use, like content. You have to change up your content and keep it original, and it was really great fun test to show them to try new things and see what works and use what you have.
Yeah,
For
it's
sure.
almost like it would be akin to like a marathon, right? Where you triple the posting rate, and that's all that you talk about on that channel, and you dig deep into it and get people excited. It's really great for events, gets the energy going, and it conveys to your current followers that sense of excitement. And in some of these particular cases, there's construction going on. It's a really beautiful, it's kind of an epic venue. It's also a historic venue in a small town. So it's got a lot of local attention and PR. So people see that, it gets them very excited to see that this group is actually not just following the letter of the law, but there's kind of this respect for the history of it. So you combine all of those things and then use some of those fun features in the takeover, and it really does kind of amp up that kinetic energy. And as that happens, it's like with Facebook, when you start to get more interactions, your profile is elevated through all of your users' news feeds and streams.
For sure, yeah. And aside from the great growth that Krista described on the channel, that's kind of the main purpose of it was definitely the growth of the Instagram channel. But two other kind of side wins as well to that was one that Kristen outlined is that there's a kind of a parent account, and that's part of a branding play. So it makes people more aware that there is a brand that's associated all these venues together. So from a branding perspective, it was valuable to us. And then also, this one venue in particular is a very newsworthy topic right now. And not only does it obviously lend to that and gives them more attention, but it also connects them to the other venues and allows the other venues in the company to also leverage all the attention right now as well. Because, you're not always going to have a grand opening and things like that. So you really have to think that this is something that it's a really valuable piece, and how to make the most of that in your strategy is really important. Because you won't always have one, so you really have to make the most of it.
Yeah, I think the other thing, because there were a lot of stories during that takeover as well, and stories, it may seem trivial, but it's actually not, because stories have different levels of interaction, animations, polling, hashtagging, special effects. You can also see that very, very similar to Snap, it's got the filters that you can do it introduces a new level of kind of fun into the whole thing, as opposed to just really what you can do some other things, but it's just straight up poster or video. It's a lot more down to earth and connected with your audience.
Yeah, and Instagram typically, more so than any of the others, is probably the most behind the scenes kind of channel, if you accept Snapchat maybe. But more so than Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn or anything like that. So yeah, stories, that's part of why I believe they become so popular, is because the initial intention with Instagram was this kind of behind the scenes, more of a personality kind of look at a brand. And then you can just take that one step further with stories, which are supposed to be real-time, fun personality, and when you think about using them, don't just think about your target audience as well, but you're presenting your brand, and you could be doing something like a job posting, and perhaps you need other people to join your venue, and then people come and they see the actual personality of the place. There are other people working there that enjoy it. There are other elements and values to it as well, beyond just your general brand awareness and target audience. So yeah,
absolutely. So what else did you guys, Scott was just sending me a picture, because we're friends, of him on his boat. Thanks, Scott. I'm currently sitting in a studio with air quotes.
That's cruel, but it is Friday, so maybe you'll be there. Maybe it'll be you tomorrow.
Well, someday. Not for the next couple of weeks before the move.
Oh, right.
Don't even want to talk about it.
Don't even go into that.
Don't even want to talk about the fact my daughter got stung like 30 times by a mosquito and had to spend 4 days in the hospital. Seriously.
It's been a week for Dan.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Anyhow, I need a boat.
Yeah,
Tara.
but yeah, so that is just one example of the Instagram takeover. That's just one of several tactics that we've seen successfully implemented. And like we said, that's kind of the growth hacking, is what we would call it in the office, that we layer on top of the regular content creation and community management. And those are really, as I like to say, if anyone has seen my social media marketing presentations, are 3 of the 4 pillars of social media marketing, the 4th of which being paid advertising. So really important layers to think of when you're building your strategy. That's how we've done it with this particular client. And yeah, we also work with several other companies as well from a kind of a consulting perspective with people who do have internal teams. They have the manpower, they're just not sure how to use it. So
yeah, I think one of the things is with social is getting away from the notion that you have to have this incredibly polished kind of formal presentation. You know, if you look at these particular venues, they're epic, they're beautiful, they're great. And I think what we've managed to do in terms of communication is really kind of not de-elevate, but bring the brand down to earth where people can connect to it. Because yes, I'm going to see these gorgeous venues overlooking rivers and waterfalls and everything, but when you see a real bride and a real groom and a real wedding party having fun there, I think it's more impactful. And it's also, you know, there's a place for all of that. There's a place for the professional wedding shot, and we do all of that. But there's also a place for, you know, people just having a birthday party with grandma, or, you know, whatever it is. And it really, I think it really has a strong impact on the brand as a connective tissue between the fans and the brand itself. And one of the things that I noticed when we were talking about this before the live was the fact that there's been a substantial increase in the number of users posting and tagging and uploading directly to those the brand pages over the past, say, 12 months. And that's actually, you know, you don't really change, you can change a North Star metric, but that's a real key indicator that you're connecting when people are talking to you a lot, right?
For sure, yeah, mentioned specifically, and I've said it many times probably on the live before, but engagement rate. I know everyone loves to focus on growth rate, but engagement rate, really, that is the first metric I look at when I look at any social media channel. You could have 20,000 followers, 100,000 followers, but if your latest post has 2 likes on it, like that's, you know, that's a huge red flag for me right there. So really, I'd rather see a smaller qualified audience that has huge engagement rates, because you can take what you're doing and just double down on it. People enjoy your content, they enjoy your strategy, and just expand it really from there, as opposed to, you know, a strategy that's kind of flopping, but maybe you do have a lot of followers because you've been around for a longer time, or whatever strategy you may have used. But yeah. All right, cool. That's so that's kind of what's working for us. We wanted to just do our cover on social media strategy and how to put that together in a long-term sense and keep it growing. So yeah, we'll move along to what's new.
What's new? Yeah. There's a bunch of things that are new and happening right now. That's for sure. So I think one of the things that we can talk about, I just have to figure out.
Yeah, we already mentioned the Instagram algorithm change and the fallout of that. Now people have been kind of pivoting their strategies. So we haven't seen too many dramatic things yet, but yeah.
No, I think one of the things, and this happens a lot with Google SEO and primarily Google SEO, is that unless you have all of your eggs in one type of a basket, or you're gaming the system to some degree, because they're, you know, things like pods and things like that, they're there and they're good to, you know, unless you're a celebrity, you know, a pod kind of notion, it obviously is helpful, but, you know, done improperly, it can, it's going to get flagged by the algorithm, like they're.
Yeah. Do you want to just explain what a pod is for those who don't know?
Oh, yeah. An Instagram pod is like essentially like a group of partners that you work with, and when you go and you release something, you basically just let them know that you have this piece of content out and you'd like their help assisting with it, and they basically leverage engagement as well as likes and everything. They'll repost it, encourage like people to go and see it, and they really start to get your engagement up, and it's a reciprocal relationship where you do the same thing. And it's kind of like a bit of a trickery where it's not like Instagram can't really tell it's a partnership because you're all just engaging and commenting on each other and you're all friends.
Yeah, and there are very, very large pods with very, very large followers and with profiles that have very large followings. Not to say that a pod is necessarily a bad idea done properly, but
that's how qualified it is, and what pod is it? Who's in it? You know what I mean? It's
But these are things. So those are tactics that if that was the one thing you were doubling down on, that eventually the they will figure out how to bust that up algorithmically. Like, it's just a matter of time. So when you see this, the Instagram changes, if you've got a good strategy, a solid strategy that's spread out around truly, finding engagement, finding your audience, not being repetitive, you're looking at your metrics, and you're looking at, especially the one thing that you can absolutely be 100% sure of, if you can keep on top of new features and new feature releases, you will get preferential treatment from the algorithm and from Google. Facebook user says, Courtney has an awesome laugh.
that was Nira. She's got her privacy settings on or something. I don't know, but I can see it.
Okay, Facebook user. No, but if you're on top, you will get preferential treatment for new features that are rolled out 100% of the time. Mainly because, and if you can get to the beta programs, even better. But mainly because if it's a new feature, chances are a lot of people aren't necessarily using it yet. So you've got less saturation in there. So in terms of how you deal with algorithms, in one way is just, I wouldn't say necessarily ignore it, but don't be an algorithm watcher and try to figure, if you're doing that, then you probably are using tactics that would be vulnerable to that algorithm, right? Same goes for Google search. It's the exact same kind of concept.
For sure, you can make tweaks and things like that, but don't pivot your entire social media strategy every month based on the algorithm. But really, at the end of the day, it's probably just slight tweaks that you can make to your already existing strategy. Like I said, if for Instagram, perhaps twice a month, solicit some user-generated content and ask people to tag you. It could be something as simple as that. So
So one of the good ones, and this leads back into what's working. So there are, and this will roll out, is that you've been able to tag products in images as well, and certain e-commerce vendors are going to get the shopping bag icon added to their stories as well. And I think one of the things to watch out for, if you've got an e-commerce store and you've got an active if you don't have an active Instagram and you're in the B2C e-commerce space, I think you really, really want to get on there and start thinking Instagram. There's a lot of talk in the world of paid advertising and now this is probably a bit dramatic, but that Facebook advertising performance is declining. I mean, it's very, very effective still. I think what's going to happen more is you're going to see Facebook saying, they're saturating out the amount of ad space that you've got on the Facebook platform. And so they bought Instagram, and Instagram has really had some limited amounts of advertising, especially with e-commerce. So basically, if you look at it from an inventory perspective, right? Like, where can Facebook sell advertising? They can sell a lot more on Instagram right now. So the suggestion that I would have if you've got an e-commerce store is get yourself, one, verified as a business, because you need to do that. Get your e-commerce tools set up, get your product catalog set up, because you need that, and then start testing out how to tag, because this feature here is going to roll out. And when people can purchase on Instagram, if you've got an active audience, you're going to sell a lot, especially fashion, lifestyle, consumer goods. I mean, it's not a platform to dismiss as just a bunch of kids posting pictures anymore.
For sure.
Yeah, and one thing just that Instagram did mention with this algorithm change, and it's been a question mark for a lot of people, is some businesses have been asking us if there's an advantage if you get a preference in the algorithm if you have a personal Instagram account as opposed to a business account. And we've had some people switch their accounts from business to personal. Instagram has come out and said no, there is no advantage to having business versus personal. With a business account, you actually get your full analytics right there in the Instagram profile. So do keep your business account and don't switch it. There isn't an algorithmic bonus to it, and you have your metrics, which you will not have as a personal account.
Yeah, if you're a business, be a business. If you're a person, be a person. That's really what it comes down to.
It's been a thing.
Yes,
Instagram had to come out and say like, okay, people, stop.
And I've especially over the past year, especially dealing in the strictly media world, it's subject to a lot of innuendo, a lot of theories, really that turn into like fake news. It's like it spreads through that community.
Yeah, because the algorithm is their product, right? So they're not going to like reveal all their product secrets and be like, here's exactly how it works. So a lot of it is speculation and through trial and error, experts like us who use it every day. We just know because we've used it how it works.
Yeah.
And then eventually they kind of own up to some things of it.
There's a lot of crackpot theories, for example, in the world of social. Like one of the biggest crackpot theories that came out over that. Last year it was pretty hot, was that you shouldn't use a third-party app to post to social because Facebook prefers native posting. Absolutely not true. I had numerous in-depth conversations with numerous people that said they had performed, data science on this, which they didn't. Mm-hmm. It's all heuristic. Obviously, major companies and Facebook, you're not going to get, and I bet you any money, if this thing, there will be some comments in here, people like claiming it's not true. But there's absolutely like no empirical evidence to show that using tools like Later or Hootsuite or Buffer or Sprinkler, like obviously these are major tools. Facebook is not going to turn around unless it's a major announcement and say don't use a third-party tool.
It'd be fairly dirty of Facebook to do to like a company like these huge companies like Hootsuite, because they clearly have like some sort of friendly partnership with them. Like they are so ingrained together that it's just like to be like, oh, we've just basically made your platform irrelevant would be pretty mean.
It's kind of silly, right? So yeah, you got to watch out. You got to watch out for that. Like the rumors, I read it on the internet, the innuendo. Like this is do this or don't do that. I mean, really, the way to keep up with it, the only way you can keep up with it is by doing it. And also, Instagram has a blog and Facebook has a blog. Like they do tell you what's coming and what's happening. Just as one example, and actually this has been a hot topic. It was a really big topic at F8, the Facebook Developers Conference. And this is I've highlighted a little bit of the some of the other data that's there. So Instagram's reporting 300 million users take advantage of Insta stories every day. Like if that's not enough motivation for you, then I don't know what is. Mm-hmm. But also it's interesting that they did a user survey and they found that people would like to watch stories for brands that they're interested in to get an insider view of products they like and find out about new products that are relevant to them. So that's, you go behind the scenes, show people how it works, right? Like use the stories for that. And then 33% said they were more interested in a brand after seeing it on Instagram stories. And I think that leads to what we were talking about before, which is just, you're just more relatable. You just seem like, maybe you care about your potential customers because you're talking to them in that story format.
For sure, yeah, and especially depending on the brand, like depending,
it humanizes it, right? Like you want to speak to a human, not a robot, essentially.
Yeah, exactly, or be spoken to, right?
Yeah, and like if you're, for example, like we're sitting here in the tannery next to Communitech. If you're like a young, hip kind of like tech company that has this new product, like, do you really want to be like, you know what I mean? Like, you want to demonstrate that's the persona and that's your brand. Is that you're this cool, on the cutting edge of all this kind of stuff. Then why wouldn't you be doing stories? Then why wouldn't you, like have that kind of a persona? Yeah. So keep in mind that like how you use your social media and which channels you use should also reflect your brand. Yeah.
And I mean, for anybody in the marketing world, you see someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, or Russell Brunson. He's another one, a big one. They're tripling down on their stuff. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk has an entire team devoted to simply his story feed. Because it's so effective for him to sell books and do, speaking engagements. He does. Actually, there's an
entire branch of VaynerMedia works on the Gary V brand, probably.
Oh no, he's got a dedicated videographer. He's got an entire team. He's got a team of copywriters, and then he's got a team of social, and he breaks social down into specific channels, but also into like there's a Instagram stories team. He wrote a post, or there was a post about how he broke it down, but I think it's about a team. I want to say, without getting into like guaranteeing, I think it's about 12 full time. So if you're really sad that you don't have the posting frequency of Gary Vaynerchuk, don't feel bad unless you got 12 friends that are willing to like devote to you full time.
To be fair
he's
to
got-
him, though, he is still he's still on it himself.
Oh,
He had
yeah.
his Gary V show, or Ask Gary V, and I went on and he said at the end of the show, anyone who uses the hashtag in the next hour, I will personally reply to it. And I tested him and I did it, and he did reply.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, there you go.
Well,
Gary.
that's
Good
him
stuff.
putting in the work. But he's got J Rock, who is I think his videographer that follows him around and does all the editing. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got graphic designers, and I think he shoots ideas over to his writers and stuff like that.
He's got like a
Anyhow.
headphone sponsorship because he's always got the headphones in.
It's at the Apple.
Just kidding.
Yeah, the pods. I don't know.
But he
Might not be
does.
wrong.
You know what? I almost bought a pair. Excuse me.
Technical difficulties on the live. But yeah, so basically that was our recap of the what's new for the Instagram e-commerce side of things.
Yeah.
So obviously, kind of across the board,
Pardon me?
Facebook, with Facebook and Instagram, you are definitely going to see them double down on e-commerce. There's been many kind of hints or breadcrumbs, so to speak, over the last 6 months, including, like we already mentioned, the introduction of Instagram stories, and then your advertisement placement, and then also being able to tag products on Instagram, and then Facebook adding their marketplace and all that kind of jazz. So you can kind of see the groundwork being laid, and I'm going to assume that throughout this year as well, you're going to see some other features and some other promotions and campaigns and things like that around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. That was my Android phone going mental. What else is new? We've got some new Twitter rules for content promotion.
Yeah, so as we were kind of just discussing, we just kind of mentioned it, was this whole, what is the effect when you use a third-party tool for your social media? Whether that's Hootsuite for scheduling or something else like that. Like Dan said, for Facebook last year, they kind of got rid of that myth and were like, no, you do not get any bonus points for scheduling directly via Facebook. Although, to a community manager's point, you do get a lot more access to the features,
For sure.
because not all Facebook features are available in Hootsuite. So, you know, that's a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
thing in that. Causes you guys a lot of pain sometimes.
Yeah, well, especially with some of the updates too.
And the tagging, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you no longer can tag people via Hootsuite. But what's actually come out is Twitter has changed their rules. And so some people use bots or certain sharing platforms to share the exact same piece of content to multiple accounts. So that's kind of what people are talking about in Twitter news right now, and this is kind of just the continued rollout of Twitter trying to qualify and authenticate its users.
Yeah.
Obviously, last year, I think Dan had mentioned it in our live when this was going on. Twitter had to do a huge cleanup and remove a whole ton of accounts. I don't know, some astronomical number of
It was
accounts.
like 37% of
Yeah.
all Twitter accounts were in bot accounts.
Yeah, so they basically removed those and removed them all, and they're just trying to clean it up and make it more authentic and make it more valuable, right? And just not have random people following you that are clearly bots, you know, that are not valuable at all, aren't engaging with you. So that's kind of the intent behind this. Everyone seems to be kind of pro, yes, don't post via multiple accounts. I guess that makes sense. It's kind of spammy. But another side to the rule that they've come out with is saying that you can't duplicate a post either. So they're saying that if you do post, perhaps today we made a tweet, we can't make that exact same tweet 2 weeks from now. So that's a little more gray. Some of the developers and things like that have been questioning it and saying, is this really true? Because that's going to be like kind of really problematic for bloggers and people like that, who, you know, you write a blog post, you are naturally going to share it more than once. So the parameters on like, if it's the same link, does it matter? Is it only if it's the identical same tweet? So it's more of like a duplicate content play, like on Google.
Yep.
That part of it is a little unsure. We're going to see how that rolls out. But if you are, for example, if you have a business account and you have a personal account, and right now you're scheduling the identical content to both of those channels, stop doing that. That's what Twitter is clamping down on, and that's what it wants to remove, is any sort of automated bot activity like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things. So if you have like we have, a few different platforms have this notion, but in Hootsuite Enterprise, it's called the content library. So you build up different types of content libraries that may be evergreen, right? So if we're talking about, you know, ways to segment an email marketing list, and we've written a long form blog post, which is actually, you know, one of the posts we do have. I think the only thing that we would really need to do is just not have the exact same tweet text in there. But again, as Courtney said, it's a gray area. It's not entirely defined.
Sorry, I'm smiling because Andrew Webb just joined us. Hey, Andrew. How's it going, dude?
You missed at least 4 or 5 really good puns.
Yes, the office has just been punless without you.
Very good. Where was I?
I interrupted him good on that one.
I totally forgot.
We're talking
Oh
about
yeah,
Twitter
no.
multiple accounts.
So you can still load up your content library and create a content library of your evergreen content and your infographics and things that are not necessarily 100% timely. And then when you're scheduling, try to find a different angle or a different take on it. And really, I think a lot of this particular piece of news has to do with more spam style tools. There was a tool called DLVR.it. They're a little unscrupulous in terms of, how effective it would be and everything else.
Yeah, we're not talking about like the qualified platforms like Hootsuite and Falcon and things like that. We're talking about, more like bot tools that are used on Twitter and things like that. That can be questionable depending on how well they're used. But that's all. To Dan's point, I think it's just encouraging that you customize your content. If you also have any sort of automation that, like, when you post to Facebook, it automatically posts to Twitter, and things like that, vice versa, they're also kind of clamping down on that kind of thing.
Yeah, and just as a side point about that, please don't ever do that. Don't take one message and post it to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Quora. Like, that's a bit ridiculous, because then what you're really not doing is tailoring the message for the audience and the platform, and those platforms are all incredibly different. So just take the time to think about the message. There's nothing more annoying than seeing these types of tools that, effectively, if you're uneducated, would be like, well, why would I sit there and write 7 different messages for 7 different networks? Because it's obvious, right?
Yeah, and if you're putting out the same post at the same time across all your channels, it's just bad. It's just bad best practices for social media. Your audience can't be in 3 different places at once, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if they are on Facebook in the morning and then they go to your Instagram channel at night and they see the exact same piece of content, like, strategically, that's not a good idea either. So kind of a basic thing when we create our content calendars, which are basically an Excel spreadsheet, or we work directly in Hootsuite or other platforms to build them, we look at that kind of holistic view. And that's why you don't just post in real time and not consider kind of how that would look as a brand as a whole. We're not just considering that one post in particular, we're also considering what's happening on the other channels at that time. What does the news feed look like when it's all put together? There's a lot of different things that we have to consider and look at other than just that post.
And you should too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, customizing content per channel is probably one of the very first tips that Kristen and I give to anyone who's doing social media content. Do not copy and paste the same post per channel. Length of post, obviously is like the first obvious thing. On Facebook, you have a lot more room to write. Hashtag use as well. You're not going to put 6 hashtags on Facebook, but on Instagram that would look totally natural. So please customize it. You will get better results with your content.
Absolutely. And just the one last thing before we wrap up, since how you doing, Kristen? Is it you gotten over your nerves? Told you nothing was going to happen from the moment you walked in the door here. Like, it was pretty much exactly this. Google has released additional ad settings to prevent, and this all goes down to the Cambridge Analytica stuff. I know Facebook is rolling out to turn off some targeting signals, so be aware of that. These tools are now, like, rolling into markets. So for your ad campaigns, don't necessarily assume. So if your impressions are up but your click-throughs are down and different things are happening, take into account the fact that users are able now to start more and more through ad choices to turn off. I don't want to be targeted. I don't want to be remarketed to. And it goes well beyond an ad blocker, because ad blockers are classically, trust me, they're terrible at actually blocking the tracking. Even if you go into incognito mode, you are still getting cookies dropped all over the place. Right. But when the platform is allowing to turn it off, at least the point to which they're saying. So watch your ad campaigns if you're running ad campaigns, and if you're doing a lot of targeting, just be aware that it's debatable how many people are going to take advantage of this, but it certainly could impact you depending on your audience. So Anyhow, it's 4:59, and that's it. We did pretty good. You made it.
There you go.
Kristen, you made it.
Yeah,
well
we'll
done.
save media networks for next time you're on the live, all right?
There you go.
Mandate offer.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us, and have a great weekend.
All right, enjoy your Friday.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.